old phone to test it out and see what it's like on the phone compared to testing it out on the old laptop. And I tell you what, to even start with, I can't see any of the comments, or even if there is comments being made to start with. A poll, a question. Mosh. Okay. I'm playing with the buttons now. Oh, effects. Oh, that's cool, isn't it? I've never played with this thing before, like, it's interesting. I got a like, but no one's watching. That makes no sense. Oh, there's two people watching now. Slant, how's Kevin? How you keeping, boy? I'm trying this out on the phone. I was like, I haven't tried this before out on the phone. I want to see what it's like on the phone. How's Wayne keeping? How you doing? I actually think it looks better on the phone than it does on the laptop, to be honest with you. Especially the camera wise. I think the camera is much better on the phone. Can you hear me, Kevin? Or can you not hear me? Looks different. Hope all is doing well. Yeah, I think it looks better on the phone than it does laptop, Jim. What do you think? I'm pretty good. I want to start making. Ah, hearing you well. I think the sound. Do you think the sound is better or worse? Maybe the sound is better on the computer. I don't know. I just posted up a short there as well on Finlagan. They've got new links up and new information about the archaeological dig that was going on in Finlagan. Oh, new job! What job? Congratulations, man. How you? What job do you have now? Or are you doing the archaeological work? Is it? I'm gonna play around with some more. I'm gonna do some mad stuff off this. Create highlight. All right. What else can I do on this one? Lighting. Relight on. Keeps going relight, but I don't see any difference between the relight on and relight off. Retouch. Is there any difference there? I don't see any difference. Relay off. I think it's probably better with the relay off. Driving school buses, been telling the kids of the Irish medieval history. Oh, nice one. Talking them into subscribing early. The problem is as well, it's definitely trying to pull kids over to medieval history. The reason for it is because they're short. This year, actually, Maynooth University was giving out that there were more kids signing up for Greek and Roman studies than there were for Irish studies in Maynooth University, which is really not great. Like, but the problem is the Irish government isn't putting enough money into Irish culture this year. It's absolutely shocking. Like Ireland makes the majority of its money from tourism, especially around St. Patrick's Day. And this year, would you believe it? Dundalk is not having. I actually have to make a short on that one. Dundalk is not having a St. Patrick's parade, which is insane. And it's the council. The council is refusing to put money into it. I don't know what is going on there. It's insanity. It's this constant thing of trying to keep companies happy. That allegedly that's what they're accusing. What was it called? Conservatives are accusing um, the government of what was it called? Keeping major companies happy to a bit too much of a radical perspective, which isn't good. And it is like to be honest with you, it's very fucking very very bad right now when it comes down to trying to keep everyone else happy. But the Irish people themselves, like it's absolutely wild right now. But it makes no sense that they're not putting money into Dundalk, especially from a tourist perspective. Like, because it's always like this kind of stuff is always wrecking up the locals. because the locals in Ireland make more money from tourism, especially in places like Dundalk and Dublin and up around the Kerry region, than they do from anything else. Like, you know, we have multiple St. Patrick parades. Yeah, Buffalo. There's one for. Ah, nice, nice, nice. Yeah. So I can't understand it. Why the Dork one allegedly is getting cancelled? That makes no sense. For lack of funding as well. Definitely makes absolutely no sense, especially when there's so many major companies in Dundalk. But it's the council. It's not the companies per se. It's just the budget for the council is going more into ticking boxes to keep the companies happy than it is to allegedly. This is allegedly now, according to conservatives in Ireland, and what was it called? So allegedly, the council isn't spending the money well, and so there's no money, according to conservatives. There's no money now to bit for St. Patrick's Parade in Dundalk, according to conservatives in Ireland, which is rising. There is a rise of conservative ideas in Ireland because of the housing crisis in Ireland. Yeah, $1 million grant. Is that from the government? That's not bad though. $1 million grant. Yeah, I suppose we can't give out about other ethnic groups in America when we're getting $1 million grant. I was there to myself because a lot of people are giving out lately about the Jewish communities in what was it, the Bronx. What was it called? Who were studying the Torah, but they reckon the Jewish communities in the Bronx, I reckon a lot of the money is donation money from other Jewish people who go into Manhattan during the day between, what was it, 9 o'clock in the morning, if not even more, all the way up to 6 o'clock. So they reckon that the majority of the money for them to study the Torah comes from the other side of the community, which is in Manhattan, which is fair enough because the Jewish community in Manhattan produce a lot of money. Like, if you haven't noticed, they produce a lot of money. So I wouldn't be surprised if a good chunk of that is going into the Jewish community in the Bronx. So I suppose we ourselves can't really give out if we're getting $1 million grants from the government as well at the same time. If they are getting state funded money to study the Torah in the Bronx. Because I know a lot of people are giving out about that these days. Should just stay. Yeah, yeah. Which is, fair due, like. Because me and Yuki were talking about that last night as well. In Japan, they want to cut state funding for Korean schools because they feel the Korean schools need to follow the curriculum from 9 to 6. And I was wondering to myself, sure, don't the Irish American schools follow the curriculum from 9 to 6, and then everything that's extra is done after the American curriculum. So it's like America First, which is the American school system, 9 to 6, and then after they finish the American school system, then they do Irish dancing, and all the other Irish bits and bobs after that, like. Bum bum bum. Let me play with this a wee bit more. What's mirror side do? Ah, right, right, right. Wow. I think I broke it. Okay, let's turn that off. What's this do? Sibling. It's gonna get freaky now, is it? I don't see any difference. What's going on here? No? Okay. What's this do? Alright. Bye bye. Underwater. What's underwater do? Bye lads. I'll see you later. Gee, this is a wild one. Skeleton. Let's go freaky. No, I don't see any change there. Big head? No. Some of these aren't working at all for me. Well, that one's working anyway. Disco. Disco, disco. No, don't see anything. Bop, 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 bop. No. Let's see if this one works. Mirror? Oh, well, that's definitely. Yeah, mirror definitely works anyway. Oh, well, that works. I can tell that one works. It's the wildest ones work fine. Alright, that works. Makeup. I don't see any makeup ones. You must be adding some of these on. Red eyes. Oh, well, that hopefully worked. That people in here, no problems like. Horror show. X-ray. Oh, not bad. Terminal. Retro. The disco one isn't working at all. Oh no, I got the disco working now. Disco, 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 disco. Ah, she's grand. I think my favourite one is probably the X-ray. I really like the X-ray run, to be honest with you. Hey Phil, how you doing, boy? Any crack? Not much now, Snowy. Bum bum bum. Any news with yourself? I don't know that I actually ever seen a Jew in person before. Really? I thought you'd know a good few Jewish people. I know a good few of them are up in Manhattan, the Bronx. I don't know if there's any Jewish communities in Boston. Are they not like mostly, or even up in Buffalo and stuff? But they're mostly focused up in Manhattan, I think. Well, not Manhattan, New York, like. I don't see the lag in your voice or mouth movements that I normally see on the camera you use. I think it looks better anyway. Yeah, maybe it is better on the phone. Maybe we'll keep to the phone. So if there's a massive lag as usual, that's interesting. You point that out actually. Very interesting. Maybe I should start using the phone from now on. So if that's the case, da, da, da. Look at that. Wah. I think this one's wild. The X-ray one is absolutely brilliant. It's good crack. So I've been doing Duolingo for Irish. I need to do for Irish maybe. Well, I should really get back to doing the Japanese one since I'm in Japan right now. Jesus, look at that. That's just wild. But what was it called? I was doing the Duolingo in Japanese like 5 years ago, and then I didn't get back to it. And I've picked up bits and bobs, and I was picking up a good few words and learning a good bit of Japanese. I wouldn't say like anything special, like, but I was learning a good bit when I was actually working. I think when you're working with people who speak Japanese all the time, I think you pick it up the fastest. Especially when you have to do tasks. I was picking up a good few words when was like, oh, we have to go and clean this, or you have to go and do that. Because I was working up in the base with a cleaning company, and I was picking up a good few words doing that. The beard and hair looks sick with the filter. Yeah, it looks good, all right. Like, I tell you, she does a fine old job. What was it called? And she sure sticks out like a sore thumb. Finlagen. But the thing is, you can't put a background on. If I could put a background on, I'd be flying. Let me see. The filters are great and everything, but I'd rather just be able to, where is it? Stickers, hide live video. Oh, well, then buy it. Gone again. 1 second. We'll turn that back off. Burp. Looking like a wizard. Oh, I. Boom, boom, boom. Wayne, how are you finding that book? What do you think of it? What's this button do? Oh, well. My small little apartment. And stickers. Looking like a wizard, brother. There are a lot of them in New York. I know a bunch of them live in. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I heard about that as well, Kevin, that they're pretty tight together, like. But I think it's mostly the Orthodox Jews are very tight together. I think, isn't it the Reform Jew. I think it's the Reform Jews are easy going. I know tons and tons and tons of Reform Jews. I'm sure it's the Reform Jews are the ones that are easy going, and some of them are even atheists. Because I know, all right, that you can be an atheist and be a Jew, from what I heard recently, because of the fact that Judaism is seen as a do religion rather than a faith religion, from what I've heard. But don't quote me on that one. I just heard that from another Jew. Da, 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 da. Mm. Yeah, you're right. I've probably met a bunch of non-Orthodox ones. Just never knew it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I know a lot. There's tons of Reform Jewish communities that are tied in with the Irish communities. That's why the whole Jewish Irish thing is so complicated, especially in New York, in Manhattan. Da, 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 da. My cousin is a Jew in Ireland. Yeah, there's loads of Jewish people connected in with the Irish, especially in Manhattan, because of the fact that they had to defend themselves from the Protestants and the Germans, which is so funny because there's obviously the British Jewish communities that are tied in with the Freemasons and all that stuff. So it is very, very complicated. All right, he lives in Pennsylvania too. Oh, nice. I don't think the Jews believe in Jesus Christ, but don't quote me on that one. No, I think, yeah, no, actually, what the deal is that they believe that there was a Jewish man called Jesus, but they don't believe he was the Messiah. But then on top of that, then, even between the Orthodox communities, they argue um, the importance of Jesus Christ, and even today, and it's going to continue being a massive problem within the Jewish communities because they're tied in with so many Christian communities of how important Jesus Christ was, because you can't, what is it? There is a branch, I can't remember what branch of because it wasn't like all Jewish people hate Jesus Christ. It was just a certain group of them didn't like Jesus Christ. Because by the time you get up to around 30 AD, you then have different branches of the Jewish faith. And the Jewish branch that obviously, what was it, had Jesus whacked in 30 AD, that branch is gone now. That doesn't exist anymore. But the branch we have today um, is another branch that, what was it called? There's the main two branches today are the ones that immigrated over to the Iberian Peninsula, which is the Sephardic, what was it called? Sephardic Jewish branch, and then there's the Italian German branch, which originated in around the, wasn't it the Egyptian? Because they're the Pharisees Jews. The Pharisees Jews are the ones that branched in, what was it called? Bum, 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 bum. This is why you shouldn't be quoting me on this one. Why I'm not a theologian. But it's the Pharisee Jews that are ones that are still around today. And it was the ones that what was that? Persecuted Jesus is a different branch, and they don't exist anymore, from my knowledge. And because they got wiped out by the Romans, wasn't it, in 70 AD, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, do, do, do. Jews believe Jesus was a prophet at times. Yeah, you see, it depends what branch you're talking about. Jews believe in Jesus as a great rabbi. Yeah, you see, because there is branches that big up Jesus Christ, and then there's branches still today that don't like Jesus Christ. So it depends what branch you're talking about. Some of them do and don't. Some of them have nasty things. Yeah, there is ones that believe in because it's also, the problem is as well, is within the Torah there is a guy called Jesus, but we don't know if it's the prophet Jesus Christ or a necromancer. There's a necromancer who does nasty things in the Torah, but a lot of Jews that criticize and say it's not Jesus of Bethlehem, they turn around and say that the dates don't add up, and allegedly the dates don't add up. So Jesus, the necromancer that's in the Torah, supposedly is not the same as Jesus of Bethlehem, and that's what's causing the problems as well. is the interpretation of the Torah, which a lot of Orthodox Jews disagree with. Tens who sent me straight, Philip. Y'all in the chat too, because I didn't know for sure. There are so many different types of Jews, just the level of which branch they're from, let alone different steps. Yeah, that's a fact as well. And yeah, like a lot of them, they try to, because there's so few of them, they try to kind of keep together for when they're being persecuted, which is a lot. Like even right now, a ton of persecution going on, and it's complicated because look at the Irish problem right now, which is you've got some Jewish communities that really don't like the Irish communities, but then you've got Jewish communities that are literally married into the Irish communities. So it's complicated. It really is very complicated. Um, do, do, do. You see, even on top of that, when you say most Jews, I right now, because so many Jewish communities are supported by Christian communities, um, right now I would probably disagree with that, but you could still find Jewish people out there, which wouldn't be, biggest in favor of Jesus. So it depends on that one and the interpretation of what the Torah says because I think most branches these days only got set up around 800 AD, and then even on top of that, a lot of Jews would turn around and said that there's branches that pop up in the 19th century as well. So there's, and even what was it called in the last 20 years, you have an atheist Jewish branch that's popped up because of the fact that a lot of Jews say it's not fate, it's mostly revolving around the doing process. So allegedly, you can be just like Buddhism. In Buddhism, there are atheist Buddhists and there are Christian Buddhists, and then there's like, what's it called? In Japan, it's mostly Shinto Buddhism and Zen Buddhism. Zen Buddhism, if you say you're a Zen Buddhist, you're mostly somebody who kind of sees it as a stripped down version of it. And then Shinto Buddhism is when you take in all the Japanese folklore and stuff. So even in Buddhism, there's loads of different branches and interpretation. And it seems to be the same thing. Even now, seems to be the same thing where there's so many different branches of it. Like, I think the Pharisees that dislike Jesus. I think the others I can think are. Oh, I. Mm. Yeah, actually, funny enough, I was looking into Buddhism in New York as well last night because there is a big Korean Buddhist temple in Queens. Because myself and my wife, in the evening, sometimes we put on the old PlayStation and play a few video games and stuff. And my wife's into fighting video games, and there was a new DLC that came out for this fighting game called Fatal Fury, which is based up around the Bronx. But the new kind of DLC map is set in Queens and it's set in the Korean temple. And I was like, I wonder if that's real. So we looked it up and it's real, all right. The only massive difference is that in the video game, it has a traditional writing style of Korean Zen Buddhism. And in the video game, they changed it to a traditional, the font style is traditional style. Where in real life in Queens, New York, the Korean Zen Buddhist temple has a modern Korean font, which is really fascinating in itself. I always thought America was the biggest Buddhist place because of the people in yeah. I'd have to, yeah, it'd be interesting. I'd say so with California and stuff, the way California is. Mm. Yeah, I love Zen Buddhism. I think Zen Buddhism is really awesome. I think Shinto Buddhism is interesting as well, but Shinto Buddhism I feel like is very kind of I don't know, I kind of have funny feelings about it because I don't get me wrong, I really like folklore, but I feel like folklore is kind of like playing with your when it comes down to fate and stuff. I feel like it's playing with your toys, Where I feel like Zen Buddhism is so blunt, and especially like I think I prefer, maybe it's just because of my Christian biasm, but I think I find it so interesting is Christian Buddhism. For anyone who doesn't know, I think it's around the late medieval period or something, with a lot of Asians get start to get persecuted for being Christian, and so they blend themselves, especially in Japan, but also happens in China as well. So what they do is they build their churches like Buddhist temples, and they switch the symbols of Buddhists around, because you can be a Christian and a Buddhist. So a lot of Roman Catholics and especially in China as well, like it's only these days now, even the Roman Catholics now are trying to like pull all these, branches of the Roman Catholic Church out from China and stuff, and they've made certain agreements with the Chinese government, which even allows the Chinese government to select its own bishops in China. But they're trying to like find all these underground what was it, churches. So basically, what happened? It started off in Japan, and then it got over to China and other places in Asia where they were persecuting Christians. So instead of, when they were building a church, they made it look like a Buddhist temple, and then they switched all the, Jesus and Mary and stuff to look like Buddhas rather than look very Western. And it's funny now today because a lot of Westerners now are going to Japan and China for holiday, and they're like, why does Jesus look Asian? And the reason why Jesus looks Asian is because Jesus is meant to look like the Buddha to camouflage him in, to prevent, what was it called, persecution. But because now the problem is the Roman Catholic Church has reestablished itself in China, and is trying to find all these Christian Buddhist churches and trying to like bring them into the fold and stuff. But the problem is now is that they're so used to persecution that they're just are still trying to keep themselves hidden away, because they've been persecuted for what, 500 years now. I love the old Koreans. Oh, I. Mm, mm, mm. Would I say Buddhism is a religion or a philosophy? That's an interesting one. I think it depends on the individual's interpretation of the teachings of the Buddha, to be quite honest with you, because there's a lot of people that could approach Buddhism from the perspective of philosophy. I think if I took it more seriously, I think I could easily take it from the perspective of a religion, especially if I was to tie in my own Christian faiths. The thing is, the biggest thing is that, and this is why some people believe that Jesus Christ was influenced by Buddhism, because the Buddha, the original Buddha, lived 300 years before Jesus Christ was born. And so by the time Jesus Christ is born in Bethlehem, the influences from India to Jerusalem was already there in the time of Jesus Christ. And we can see that by when Jesus Christ goes out to the desert for 30 to 40 days. That's something a Buddhist would do. And there's tons, and vice versa, there's loads of influences then later on that goes from Christianity to India with the Buddhists and stuff, like even the rosary beads and stuff. So there's beads and prayer beads and stuff that ends up influencing Buddhism the other way around. So Christianity and Buddhism end up influencing each other. And as we said there as well, when Christians are being persecuted, they end up getting hidden and go under Buddhists. So Buddhists end up protecting a lot of Christians and stuff. So you can see why Christian Buddhism ends up really blurring together, going into the late medieval Renaissance. So I think it's more or less your interpretation more than anything else. Bum, 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 bum. Yeah, I believe in that as well. The monastic life. The thing is meditation and prayer. Because both faiths have meditation and prayer, it's easy to blur the two of them together, especially if you take the teachings of Jesus Christ. And like the teachings of Jesus Christ are so, like, this is why I don't understand people who dislike Jesus Christ because of the fact his teachings are so stripped down simple. Like you can literally get the entire Old Testament and just kick it away. Just say bye bye. I wouldn't do it because of the historical background of it. But there's so much stuff in the Old Testament that I'm like, like what is this like, you know? And there's so many Roman Catholics and Orthodox Christians that don't take all of the teaching seriously, like or question or you know. But I'm not a theologian. This is when it comes down to the Old Testament. Like I'm definitely not a theologian. Like when it comes down to it, like what stuff do you throw away and what stuff do you don't throw away? I wouldn't specialize in it. But at the same time, reading it myself, I'm like especially stuff to do with Moses. Like whoa, like the amount of times, especially when Moses is out in the desert and going into villages and attacking them and stuff. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, you know? But then you have the arrival of Jesus Christ, and it's like, and his, you know, love thy neighbor and all that sort of stuff. And you're like, oh, well, this stuff makes sense. So all the teachings of Jesus, you could definitely easily blur into Buddhism and stuff. Insular Christianity and Buddhism are the coolest. Insular Christianity. I posted up a thing there. I don't know if you guys have added me on Instagram or not, but I have a thing on what was it called? Insular Christianity. No, not Insular. Yes, Insular Christianity. It was done by. It's over on Instagram anyway. If you click on the stories, I have a link to it there on a article that was written by a friend of mine, and in it he talks about how Egypt could have been in Ireland since the fifth AD. You know, around 410 and stuff. Just as Palladius and Saint Patrick is going over to Ireland, and the reason why he's talking about it is because Palladius is a bishop, right? Now, if you guys don't know, there's a massive difference between missionaries and what was it called? Missionaries and bishops. You cannot send a bishop straight into a pagan area, right? Because bishops are only trained up to do the administration of Christians. Bishops do not convert people to Christianity, okay? And that's very important. Bishops are sent into areas that already have a lot of Christians in it, and the bishops then do the administration, okay? This is also really important as well because although we have the head of St. Peter's, at the time of the 5th century, bishops were more powerful than they are now. These days, bishops are then under cardinals, and on top of that, then you have the Pope, right, which happens in the 11th century. But back in the 5th century, bishops were super powerful, right? So it's a huge deal that Ireland is being sent a bishop in the 5th century, okay? So that means there's already Christians in Ireland by the 5th century, which I do believe in because we already have educated Irish people writing Ogham writing. And the more study we've done into Ogham writing, the more we can see how sophisticated and advanced it is, because the people who are writing in Ogham are really super educated with Latin. So we have an educated Irish community in Ireland by the 5th century writing and Ogham writing, which further kind of nails down the head that there were a large Christian community in the Kildare region, okay? St. Patrick appears to be a missionary that is sent to what is now Armagh and Downpatrick, but there seems to already be a Christian community, a large Christian community in what is now the Kildare region, which is, yeah, St. Bridget area, which is very interesting. And the fact that they want to send a bishop, St. Palladius, there. So it seems that there was already Christians there. So it also seems, there's an article now, it's over on my Instagram if you guys want to read it, and it's written by a friend of mine. And he's arguing that there were there perhaps were Egyptian missionaries going from Egypt. Perhaps, I believe, and I was saying it to him as well, and I'm waiting for a reply off him, but I believe there were Coptic Christians, because at the time, Egypt and Ethiopia were Coptic Christians, which are the original Christians, and which is even more important because as Rachel said before, the difference between the Coptic Christianity and Roman Christianity. Roman Christianity is the conversion of Roman paganism, or however you guys want to pronounce it, Roman paganism over to Roman Christianity. Okay, Coptic Christianity is the conversion from Judaism over to Christianity. So a lot of people see Coptic Christianity as the how it should be, you know. So it's even more interesting that we have Coptic Christians from Egypt appearing in Ireland, especially the Munster region, in around the 5th century, according to the article that's now over on my Instagram. If you guys want to check that out, and my Instagram page is Irish Medieval History, so definitely check that out. Bum, bum, bum. Mm. Saint Bridget is the one. Saint Bridget's another character I absolutely love. Like Moses is very questionable. When people turn around and say, "I'm not a fan of Moses," I'm like, "Yeah, I can see why," but I can't really see why you would put any hate on Jesus because of the fact he just loves everyone. Buddha, what was it? Buddha, another person. I can't understand why anyone would put any hate on Buddha. No, he's another character that's brilliant, and so is Saint Bridget. I think Saint Bridget's another character. She's absolutely brilliant, to be honest with you. Buddha, I think, is brilliant. I was reading a good bit of Buddha as well. And do you know that Buddha accidentally got made a saint in the Greek Orthodox Church? So, in the Greek Orthodox Church, so as I was saying before, Buddha was around 300 BC, right? So, Buddha pops up in 300 BC and he immigrates. Sorry, no, he passes away, obviously. Around so he was a Buddha is around 400 BC to 300 BC. He passes away, and then his teachings of meditation and prayer and stuff spreads throughout India, Asia, and then eventually, because of the trade route from India over to Jerusalem, makes his way over to the Middle East, and then from Jerusalem goes over to what was it, the Greece world and over to Rome, so on and so forth, right? And there's loads of Greek Buddhism and stuff as well, which is really interesting. But what was it called? But people from that period onwards, people talk over and over and over again about Buddha, where eventually at some stage, Buddha goes under. There's some people when they're telling the story of Buddha because he kind of becomes a kind of folklore character as well because of the stories going between from village to village to village. What happens is that, and also, sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to add at least in Christianity, many saints are old gods adopted. Yeah, that's as well because of the fact that you've got these stories and stuff and people are asking like, and it's the same with a few gods as well going between Christianity, sorry, because every single village has their own interpretation. What happens to Buddha is that eventually people are like, oh, do you remember that Buddha? And there's some villages allegedly that see Buddha as a Christian character, and then what happens is that Buddha ends up slipping under the Christian radar, and eventually, I think it's around 600 AD, Buddha gets recognized as a saint in the Greek Orthodox faith, right? But he's not referred to as the Buddha or his own Indian name because he has his own Indian name, which I cannot remember. But he's referred to as kind of a Greek pronunciation. So that's definitely worth looking up. Is the fact that under the Greek Orthodox faith, Buddha did sleep in, I think around 600 AD, somewhere around 600 AD to 800 AD. Buddha, the original Buddha, ends up slipping in, ends up becoming a saint in the Greek Orthodox Church. Not on purpose, by the way, just by, him going under the radar as a character from India. And I can't even remember what the full Greek interpretation of the story is of how he ends up becoming a saint. But I just remember he just kind of slipped in because of local interpretation and stuff. And as you guys are saying as well, about gods and stuff slipping under and becoming saints as well. When it comes to Saint Bridget, that's another interesting character as well to bring up from goddess to saint. One of Bridget's miracles was making beer into water. Yeah, I remember it as well. But you also have her turning her bat water into beer as well, wasn't it? bat water. She got her water from the bat and turned that into beer. I think I did a short on that one. But I do believe Saint Bridget was real. I think she was both a goddess because you have Burgundies, you have the goddess Burgundies in the north of York, and it was huge. Like the worshipping of Burgundies was big in the north of England, in York. But a lot of Irish linguistics and English linguistics that specialize in Celtic languages have picked it up straight away, the similarities between Bridget and Burgundies, right? And then it aligns where St. Bridget's church is today in Kildare. So a lot of people believe there's no solid evidence. Okay, the problem is there's no solid evidence to prove that the goddess Saint Bridget existed in Ireland yet. Okay, so we still need to find either literature or an actual solid find from the Iron Age or Bronze Age that supports that Saint Bridget was a goddess. Okay, so it's believed, and I do, if you were to put my feelings into it, I also believe that Saint Bridget was a goddess, right? But when it comes down to the 5th century, there's a better argument that St. Bridget existed in the 5th or 6th century, right? Now, you have to remember, the name St. Bridget is actually popular in Ireland. So I do believe that there was a woman who may have been a priestess, but she was definitely a member of the clergy, right? Christian clergy. So if I was to put feelings into it and put my feelings there, my feelings feel that she may have converted from Celtic paganism to Christianity, or insular Christianity as we call it today, or Celtic Christianity, depending on your interpretation, right? So my feelings are that she converted, but the evidence, trying to find that evidence is very, very difficult. But I do personally believe that there was a woman at the time at the area of the goddess Bridget, if I was to put my feelings there, and looking at the evidence there, it seems very plausible that there was a woman who may have been a priestess that converted and became the main abbot, what was it? It's abbot. I can't remember the actual word right now, but the head of the clergy of Kildare. That's my belief, that she converted over around the late 5th century, the early 6th century, around that period. Bridget's father was a pagan chieftain. Yeah, that's on the folklore side of things, but I do believe that story. I also believe, man, that story is much more older, because I think the surviving copy we have today, and I could be mistaken on that one, comes from the 19th century. And I think that's the problem with a lot of the tales, actually, because of the destruction of our literature and the fact that a lot of the stories only survive in the 19th century. But that's also something that you need to keep aware of. Okay, so when you're doing your research into a lot of this stuff, look in to see if it's surviving literature of the 19th century, which is questionable, or if it's actual and a solid find from around the 8th and 9th century, okay? Yeah, I actually have to do stuff as well for St. Bridget's Day on the 1st of February. But I need to highlight all of the, if the councils in Ireland are going to be removing holidays because they want to tick the box for some companies and stuff. I don't know what the hell's going on there. Very obviously poor communication, because I don't think it will be so stupid for any company to turn around and say, oh, we need to cancel all these holidays. And I don't think they're doing it on purpose. I think what's going on here is very poor communication happening between the councils and the companies, to be honest with you. But if they're going to be cancelling holidays now, like you see in Dundalk with them cancelling St. Patrick's Day, I'm going to have to put the foot down and start really highlighting the importance of holidays in Ireland. And St. Bridget's Day, obviously another one that really needs to be highlighted. In Slavic Orthodox Christianity, there is a saint who originally was the god of So that's really important. You see, that's really, really important to highlight, because it shows how gods and goddesses are converted from the old ways into Christianity, right? I wonder if there's a similar story in Ireland. I think, yeah, Imbolc, abbess or abbesses. Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. But I like if I was to use my feelings, I think you're right there as well, man. To be honest with you, that is a case of what you're seeing in the Orthodox Church as well, where you see these old goddess and goddesses, being switched over. But also, I just personally believe as well, because of the name Saint Bridget, well, the name Bridget being so popular, I do believe that's the case as well, that they were converted over. Like, yeah, Ireland did sell it. It did all right, but that's because I think Ethiopia and well, the massive difference is Ethiopia is slightly cut off because of the fact that they were Coptic Christians. I don't. I think they're are the Orthodox today. I'm not sure. I think they're still Coptic Christians today. They're still protected in the really, really ancient ways because I think a lot of people argue that Coptic Christianity is how it should be because it is a healthy conversion from Judaism to Christianity. I think a lot of people argue that that's the way it should be, is the way that they study it in Coptic Christianity rather than the Orthodox Christianity and Roman Christianity, which was pagan faiths being brought over to Christian faith. I think Coptic Christianity is brilliant as well. A huge fan of Coptic Christianity. Like, what was Columba? Yeah, Columba was a saint. You have I always get mixed up between Columba and Columbinus. Columba is the one that was in Iona between Ireland and Scotland. He was massively involved with everything. He got exiled to Iona though because of the fact he caused the civil war. Was that the period of Donica MacCurbel? Oh, it is. It's the period of Donica MacCurbel. Donica MacCurbel was already in trouble as well. He was a member of Clan Coleman. And wasn't he the last pagan king? And he was already in trouble as well because of the Justinian plague. A lot of people blamed him for the plague, if I'm not mistaken. But what was it? Diarmid MacCurbel. If I'm not mistaken, it was Diarmid MacCurbel was High King of Ireland at the time, which in Irish was Re-Roic of the Eenale Confederation. Okay, so the Eenale Confederation was the dominant war band, well, group confederation of war bands in Ireland at the time that pretty much controlled Ireland. And so Diarmid MacCurbel, I think it was the Re-Roic, which was over king of the Eenale Confederation, which to simplify the conversation, was High King of Ireland, okay? So Diarmid MacCurbel was High King of Ireland at the time, and so he told Columba, he and this is very important as well because he put in the first copyright law in Ireland, and he said that Columba was not allowed to copy another saint. There was another saint at the time, and he had stolen his manuscript and copied it, and Diarmid was like, you can't do that. I'm going to put in new laws. And he put in place the copyright laws into Brehon law, which was the Irish laws in Ireland. Okay, well, what we could now call the early Irish laws. I have it over there, Fergus Kelly's early Irish law. Whoa. I'll go over and grab it for you, ladies. 1 second there. Whoa. There we go. So here we have it here. There we go. Early Irish law by Fergus Kelly. Really important anyway, because I don't think it covers it in that book, but in it, it's got Fergus Kelly's early Irish law, and what was it called? At the time then, Diarmid MacCurbel puts in those laws in place. Cheers for the likes, lads. That's worth a ton. Get the old algorithm up and going there. But what was it called? Diarmid MacCurbel. He comes in. Jeez, I love how fact that you guys click in like and suddenly the algorithm gives it a boost. It's really working great today. But I think I remember you sending me a digital version of that. Oh, did I? Shh, we can't be talking about that stuff, Kevin. But what was it? What was it? Columba goes off and steals the book and copies it anyway. and the men of the Southern Inel threatened to attack Columba, which annoys the men of the Northern Inel, especially the Kennel Owen. So what ends up happening is there's a huge, massive battle. It's one of the bloodiest battles of all time. I think it's the Battle of the Book. Well, it's the War of the Book. They don't even have a Battle of the Book. I think it's called the War of the Book, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a huge, massive war between the Kennel and Clan Coleman, which is a huge, massive Irish Civil War over copyright. Believe it or not, the first copyright war, not just the first copyright laws, but the first copyright war. And thousands of people are killed over this, you know? It's very, very bloody. And so after the war is over, and I think it was Clan Coleman ends up winning the war. What was it called? St. Columba is exiled to Iona, and there in Iona he's put in charge of the administration in both for the Christians in Scotland and between the Northern Nail areas, which is a lot of work, especially doing it in Iona where he's exiled too. But he ends up doing just absolutely incredible work, especially in Scotland. So eventually he does become a saint, and he ends up having his own bibliography, which is, I think his bibliography is just the bibliography of Saint Columba, which is it's written by another very important saint later on as well, which, is it Saint, I think it's Saint Gall does his, maybe I'm wrong about that, or Saint Gall up in Switzerland alone. Can't remember. I think it's another very, very, very important Irish saint that does the life of Saint Columba, the bibliography, which you can get online, and it's amazing. Bum bum bum. I love that book, but it's dear to buy. Yeah, I seen it went up. And what's crazy, Wayne, is what was it? The Fergus Kelly's book, A Guide to Early Irish Law. It used to be just a tenner and I'm sure, I don't know how much is it in University College of Cork now, but I got my copy for only about a fiver. They're just giving away the books. Let me see how much price tag is on this, because normally on the back they have a price tag. They don't right now. Early Irish Law Series 3. Yeah, brilliant stuff, boys. Brilliant stuff. What else was I bloody waffling on about as well? Bum bum bum. Dear online mate, have you dug up Brian's fort before? I wonder. Did I? I think I have. Brian's fort. Which one's Brian's fort? Or Bruce fort? I might get myself a drink of water. I got laundry all over the house because I did laundry yesterday and I've been too busy to put anything away. The life of Saint Columba. Oh yes, Abanon. He's your one who did all the work over there. He was he was exceptionally good as well. Because isn't Abanon the your manor who pushes, because he was around the period of Charlemagne, or just going into the period of Charlemagne. So didn't he do a load of work sending missionaries over to, not missionaries, well, would you call them missionaries? Well, members of the clergy anyway, over to Charlemagne's court. Not sure if you would refer to them as missionaries or not, but at least members of the clergy over to Charlemagne's court. So you had a ton, but God, there's new work being studied right now. Anytime I listen, I don't know if you guys listen to it, it's the Medieval Irish podcast over on Spotify, which is ran by Maynooth University. And they've been going through the work of that, and they're saying that there's loads of politics that the Irish were involved with in Charlemagne's court, which, I was very surprised with. I thought they would go over there and pretty much be worshipped, and that's not the case at all. There's loads of politics that the Irish are involved with that they have to navigate around when it comes down to that. Dundalk is pagan. Oh, aye. Is there a St. Conor? Wouldn't surprise me if there was a St. Conor, to be honest with you. What's this button do? Chat filters. Bum bum bum. I'm just wondering if I can play with this. What I'd love now is to change the background lighting. Da, da, da. Lighting on, lighting off. Avernon is the abbot of Iona who travels to the court of Northumberland. Yes! Actually, I do remember that. You're bang on right there. Because you're that king of Northumberland. But also around that period as well, isn't there huge skirmishes happening between the Dalriada? That's the one, Dalriada. So you got the Dalriada, which was the Irish realm, which were meant to be, they were linked to, well, they were a king group of the Ullid and the Enel Confederation, and sometimes the Dalriada would pay tribute over to the Enel Confederation, but there's points where, they're not really paying their tribute to the High King of Ireland, and they're kind of just doing their own thing, and they get more and more independent going up to the Viking Age. So I think this is the point where they're starting to become more independent from the Enel Confederation, but I could be wrong on that, to be honest with you. And then they get to a point where they end up just becoming Scottish. Going into the Viking Age, some weird anomaly happens where Pictland disappears, Dalriada disappears, and then suddenly they're all just Scottish and Christian and Gaelic. And then what happens is, isn't it King David takes over and he gives the lowlands to the Normans, and then you have this whole highland lowland thing. I live in the south of the United States in Georgia and have a lot of Irish ancestry. How familiar are you with surnames? And you remind me, actually, I need to set up that live stream for Sunday, because we're doing another live stream on Clans and Dynasties on Sunday, where I'm going to have Mihal from Clans and Dynasties and also Dr. Owen O'Neill on that. It's going to be my Sunday morning because I'm over in Asia right now, and it's going to be the evening for the boys, the lads. It'll be about 9 p.m. Dublin time. What time is that? I think it's 5 p.m. New York time, if I'm not mistaken. Connor, geez, how do I pronounce that one? Bum bum bum. My pronunciation. If you haven't noticed, I'm not linguistic. Every single time somebody gives me something difficult to pronounce, what was it called? Gaeilge or any of the Gaelic languages and stuff, unless I've practiced it beforehand, I always butcher it. And then people are like, oh, but you're Irish, you're supposed to get it right. But I'm terrible at linguistic languages. I have to go and practice that now. Do you know what? I'm going to screenshot that now so I can go back over that. So I can get the pronunciations right in Gaelic, because I'm supposed to be an Irish medieval historian, so I need to practice my Gaeilge. Was an Irish Franciscan. Who else? Somebody else said it earlier. Before I just put in again. Who else said that they were practicing Gaeilge on Irish on what was it called? Using the apps on the phone. Who thinks that which app do you guys think is the best for practicing Gaeilge Irish? He was a Franciscan, an Irish Franciscan, and he was up in Donegal Abbey. He was a Roman Catholic bishop. Religious persecution of the Catholic Church in Ireland begun during Henry VIII and ended only in 1829. I'm aware of, right, with the start of the persecutions that were happening in the Tudor conquest of Ireland, but then I don't specialise in anything. Well, I start to blur off on 1603 is where I start to blur off with my specialty, because that's definitely in the early modern period, because between 1453 up to 1603, that's where you blur between the medieval period going into the early modern period. So although I do find the early modern period very interesting, that's where my specialty starts to cut off, like. But I could talk about the persecution of Christians going into the Tudor era, especially after 1534, when what was it called? Henry VIII jumps into bed with Anne Boleyn, and then he has a disagreement with the church, where he's not a Lutheran, but allegedly Church of England. But, that gives him enough reason to go around persecuting the Roman Christians. Strange. I'll make sure I am all notified. Yeah, I'm Pennsylvania, USA. My name's really hard to trace back to the 18th century. I like to catch that live. Yeah, so I think that's, if I'm not mistaken, so it's going to be 9 p.m. Irish time. And one of you guys is going to correct me there. I'm assuming New York time, that's going to be 5 p.m. And I assume like New York and Boston time are the same time. So I'm assuming that's going to be 5 p.m. in Boston as well. I don't know what the story is with Chicago. Is Chicago under New York time as well? Delingo. Jesus, I can't even pronounce that. Butchering pronunciation. Bam, bam, bam. This is why I'm not linguistic, by the way. Absolutely amazing in Irish history, or history in general. Pronunciations. This is why I'm also I'm very bad with Japanese as well, and a lot of pronunciations that's going on there. Bum, bum, bum. Word Ringans and Wayne would know about that. Those branches there. Bum, 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 bum. Instead, I love how I go down and I scroll down a wee bit, and what was it? Wayne pops up again, and he's just name calling Henry VIII, like the 1370s. Oh, I missed that. What was I waffling on about? In the 1370s, that's when Art MacMorrough Covenant? Art MacMorrough Covenant. The MacMorrough Covenants. What was it called? They were the official MacMorroughs. So the branch of the MacMorroughs, because there were so many branches that happened after 1172, the official MacMorroughs wanted to define themselves, so they started calling themselves the MacMorrough Covenants, because they wanted to see themselves as the legitimate Taoiseachs, the head chieftains of Leinster, going into the Highland Ages, but there's loads and loads of fighting. But then they don't define themselves into the late medieval period, and it's very interesting then, because in 1370 they actually, and this is why you can never call Dublin the English Pale, it's called the Pale, because of the fact that in 1370 Art MacMorrough Covenant successfully sieges, well, he doesn't actually force his way into Dublin, they already go into talks, and they give the Black Rent, which is tribute, over to Art MacMorrough Covenant. So in 1370, Art MacMorrough Covenant successfully takes the tribute from Dublin, from the Pale. And that's why anytime you see these really stupid books, or any form of media that refers to Dublin as the English Pale, you get that, you throw it out the bloody window, and you say, that's for Art MacMorrough Covenant. You should see, I wrote a name on the SCC. Bum, bum, bum. Send that on to me there, Kevin. At least Kevin. By the way, if you guys are sending anything on to me, go over to Instagram. I'm on Irish Medieval History. That's always the fastest way to contact me. TikTok is funny. People will be messaging me on TikTok, and I'll be like, what is this? This is strange. Because it bugs out all the time. Plus, they're telling me off lately as well. Bum, bum, bum. No Central Time. Chicago 1 hour behind New York. All right, so if it's 5 p.m. in New York, then it's 4 p.m. It'll be 4 p.m. in New York if I'm not wrong. If it's 9 p.m. in Dublin, it's gonna be 4 p.m. in New York. That's what it is. Because I'm sure it's 5 hours. Isn't it 5 hours behind, if I'm not mistaken? I could be wrong on that one, like. Central Standard Time, I believe. Chicago. Imagine Irish history in the future. If we're still around. I traced. Oh, nice. Bum, bum, bum. It's bloody. Go on to us on the weekend. Because I'm sure, what was it called? Mihal will know about that branch or that dynasty. And we're going to be on for you guys Saturday night. So it's going to be Saturday night. That'll be New York at 9 p.m. Saturday night. And then over on Chicago, it's going to be 11 p.m. I have relatives in Chicago. Chicago! Never been to Chicago. I passed by New York. Wasn't in New York for very long. I want to go to New York, especially for the museums. Tickety Talk. Yeah, Tickety Talk has problems. Instagram is the easiest way to contact me. So if you guys have any links or anything, and you want to message me on Instagram. It's the fastest way. Definitely contact me. Forget about emails and all that stuff. Instagram. And plus, Instagram isn't threatening me all the time. YouTube and TikTok are always threatening me. They're always sending me like, if you do this, we'll block your page. And I'm like, what? What did I do? My grandmother's family is the Burks. I'm covering the Burks on Patreon. I have a Patreon, and I'm covering the Burks on my Patreon, but you have to pay for that. That's the problem there. The thing is about the live stream on this Saturday night, which is going to be Sunday for me. It's going to be Saturday night for you guys over in, what was it called? New York, Chicago, and Boston, right? So I'm Buffalo. That's going to be Saturday night for you guys. But on Sunday night for you guys, I'm going to be over on Patreon. But that's going to be 20 quid a month. And I'm covering the Burks on that one. And that's their fighting in Connacht. The Burks married into the subject I'm covering on Sunday night. It's where the Burks married into the O'Brien family. And then they're fighting with the O'Connors. So I'm covering that on Sunday. Boom, boom, boom. I'm going to go follow your Instagram. You should. Everyone should go over and follow my Instagram. But make sure to give me a like before you go so you can get that algorithm going. What was it called? I said to the lads earlier, about 20 minutes ago, like this live stream. And I saw the algorithm suddenly jump up with views. So that was always good. We're Irish. We need to secure our place in the future. That suddenly jumped up. Give us just 1 second. Sorry about that, guys. I'm moving these comments around so I can read them. We're Irish. We need to secure our place in the future, and we're having it usurped. It's complicated right now. Better communication needs to be bloody brought in. And too many, I talked to some of the council lads. I was down when I was working in Cork doing the Irish history and the Irish tourism. The Cork council at the time, oh my God, like they would literally bow down to everything. They wanted to build a Viking centre in Cork. And Waterford was like, no, that would take the money away from us because we have a Viking centre, which is Ragnar's Tower, in Waterford. So you're not allowed to build the Cork Viking centre. And Cork Council gave in straight away. Not even disagreeing. They gave in to it straight away. So, and it was really annoying for me because I wanted money to do the Viking living history. Because I wanted to cover Viking history because at the time, the Vikings of Cork were fighting the men of Cashel, while also being allied to the Dalriada, which was Brian Boru's to it, his clan So his clan was not the Dalriada, the Dalcash, right? So the Dalcash was Brian Boru's to it clan, as you would say it in English. And they were allied to the Vikings of Cork, the Vikings of, that were close to St. Finbarr's monastic settlement. And they were fighting the men of Cashel. And I wanted to cover the history of that. And I had bought all the kit, by the way, and all the weapons and everything to it. And I just wanted the Cork to kind of pay, the Cork Council to pay me for work and stuff. And although they were paying me for a few jobs, they turned around and said they couldn't give me more work because then they were afraid they were taking work away from Waterford, which is really annoying. I was also being paid by Waterford at the time, so it wasn't too bad for me, because I was going over to Waterford to do jobs over there because Waterford, because of their because Vikings were making lots of money at the time, they were able to give money over to Viking and Gaelic groups in Waterford because there were living history groups, people who were dressing up in the early medieval kit, historical kit as well, not fantasy kit. It wasn't like leather biker stuff. It was literally how people were dressing in Waterford at the time, and that was the Waterford Vikings and also the Dacia. So there's a group called Dacia in Waterford, and they cover both Gaelic history, which is called Dacia in Waterford, and also the Waterford Vikings. So Waterford Council was making loads of money in that area. Cork, on the other hand, nah. You guys are making really, really good points there, so I just want to pop into those ones. Actually, I might just pop over to the last one. Let's invent Cork in Renaissance Fest. Yeah, you see, Cork as well has amazing Renaissance history, especially Wars of the Roses history. So if it's not willing to challenge Waterford because it's afraid it's taking money away, which will cause problems and stuff, then it should invest into its Renaissance history then, because Cork has insanely good Renaissance history, both Tudor history and Wars of the Roses history. Because there was lots of fighting during the Wars of the Roses, especially with supporters of the Fitzgeralds against the Butlers. So if you guys don't know about the Wars of the Roses in Ireland, the Wars of the Roses in Ireland was fought between the Fitzgeralds and the Butlers over control of the Irish Parliament. Both sides wanted to be referred to as the Lord Deputy of Ireland. Did you ever work with Dave Swift? I worked with Dave Swift before. He's a character. I'll tell you that one, Kevin, to be honest with you. Dave Swift is somebody you should learn from, but just the heads up there, he's a character. Okay? That's all I say about Dave Swift, to be honest with you. I've done some really, really good jobs with him before. But yeah, he's a character, all right. Like, oh, by the way, you gave me an idea for a question. Was there at any point in history where the Ireland and Rush could have any contact? So, yeah, you're bang on right. So it's more stuff. I'd love to get a grant on that one. So first and foremost, the history between the Rus start with the Scythii. So allegedly there's a connection which needs to further study there between the Scythii in the Rus area during the ancient periods and the Scotti in Ireland. Okay, we don't know much about it, and we don't know if it's just a Roman conspiracy, but more research needs to be done on that one. Skipping ahead anyway to the Viking Age, yeah, there's tons of connections between Ukraine, not so much Moscow in that period. I don't even know if Moscow exists during the Viking Age, to be quite honest with you, or if it's just a lesser trade port during that period. So in this Viking Age, it's people get very caught up with the ethnic word Rus. Rus just means rowing. You need to get caught up with the actual trade ports. So in the Middle East, well, yeah, so anyway, in that region of the Rus controlled areas, you should look at it as ports with how it works is it's a confederation of ports working together and controlling think of it more like cartel, okay? The empire itself is not so much land. The control itself is actually the protection racket going between the ports, okay? Because of the fact you're dealing with pirates as well. So you've got one group who are committing piracy, well, bandits and stuff, who are going in and committing piracy on the boats that are going up the river. And then you have a dominance of control, especially around Kiev. So Kiev end up controlling the protection racket that's going on in that area. That's, if we were to look at it from a modern perspective, would be seen as kind of like a cartel racket, right? Because of the fact that if you break the law in those regions, police are not going to go take you and bring you to prison. Instead, you've got people that act more like cartel, where they go over, take you, and then do horrible things with you if you break their protection going on between the various settlements. Okay, so that's the way to look at it. Every settlement was independent to themselves. So Kiev was independent from Moscow and the other ports in those regions going from Sweden down to Constantinople. And because Kiev was the dominant protection racket going from Constantinople to Sweden, they end up becoming insanely rich at the time. So, and I want to do further research so that various Viking confederations of various protection rackets going from Kiev to Sweden to Denmark to Norway and then over to Dublin. Now, Dublin also successfully puts together its own protection racket around the Irish Sea. So, from the moment you go from the Orkney Islands, the Orkney Islands, all the way to Dublin, and then from Dublin to Brittany, and then over to the Northern Iberian Peninsula, was a successful protection racket led from Dublin, which I would love to do further research into. Why? Because it's very important to world history because of the fact it was connected to the bigger Silk Road. So yes, you're bang on right. There is actually a connection which needs way more further study. So I'd love to do an entire doctorate and doctorate, and even push as far as, because I reckon I could easily get a professor out of that. Um, because when I went into university, I did university for about 3 years, and then I went into the tourism because at the time I was only interested in tourism, and I'm really glad I did, because I wasn't going to rush in and just mess up a doctorate and a professor. So now, the next 10 years or so, I'd love to go back and do a doctorate and professor in the Silk Road, especially to the Irish perspective of it. Especially now that I've been over to Tokyo and Japan and stuff and China, and a lot of people do ask, why hasn't more research been done into Dublin and the Silk Road? So I'd love to do research into that one. So there's huge connections between the two. The Vikings were going down. Yes, they were. Oh, really? That's really, really awesome. Do you have any info on the Moorish raids in the Southern Ireland and the trading of the Irish slaves? Oh, so you're talking about the Caliphate. For the most part, the Caliphate were trading partners with Dublin at the time, and it's the reason why the Silk Road was a success in Dublin, but it needs more research, to be quite honest with you. So I fall down. Anyway, so the thing is, at time, the quickest way to get onto the Silk Road was from Dublin down to, and this is why it becomes success is, and it's quite funny because I was looking at it more from a European perspective when we should be looking at it from a North African perspective, because of the fact that the Caliphate had taken over North Africa. So the quickest way to get into the Silk Road, and then from the Silk Road, North Africa, over to Middle East, over to Baghdad, and then from Baghdad over to India, was using the Caliphate. So there is somewhat of a healthy relationship between the main Caliphate itself and Dublin, which is led by the Emer dynasty in Dublin, which are then connected to the Nael Confederation in Ireland, which is led by the High King. One of the most dominant High Kings at the time was Donogh Dunn. So Donogh Dunn is the main High King, basically taking the tribute of this, while the Nael do all the administration work of running this protection racket. Bum, 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 bum. I just want to quickly go to your comments there. But yeah, you're right. There's piracy going on as well. You do have a lot of Moorish and Berber pirates going in and fighting with the Vikings. But for the most part, the Vikings are able to, basically batter them. The Irish Vikings, referred to in the literature as the Gaul Gael. I had a question yesterday as well about the Ustamen. The word Ustamen only appears in the 12th century, and it's only applied by Gerald Wales. It means Eastmen, but the problem is as well with the word Ustamen is there's no evolution in the word, because the word Gaul Gael continues being used throughout all of the Irish literature, and then eventually evolves into Galloglass, as it is in the English word. So that's an interesting one. The word Ustamen, which also refers to the Irish Vikings in Ireland as well. Bum, 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 bum. My wife's fifth generation grandmother. Oh, Edinburgh. No way. The unluckiness of that is crazy. Like, you guys and your DNA is absolutely wild. Hello to everybody that's jumped on there. Were the Gallowglass really that deadly? Yeah, the Gallowglass were really well organized at the time, but like they were professionals. And they were, because they were going between Ireland and Scotland, you can see why they would have had all that dominance experience, but they were really able to keep the what was it called, the English in check as they're advancing into Ireland. And they had that influence as well from Norway at the time. So if you talk about the Gallowglass of the 13th century, they were pretty much able to, keep pinned down. They were able to have a lot of tactics that were able to completely pin down and nullify the English knights as they were advancing into Ireland. Dun, dun, dun. I think the descendants of the Gallowglass and my grandma were Sweeney from Sligo. So why were the Gallowglass so dominant in the 13th century going against the English? The reason why they were so dominant is because, first and foremost, as you guys are pointing out there with the MacSweeneys. The MacSweeneys are the first major war band that eventually do become a Gaelic mercenary company in the late medieval period in the Renaissance. But going back to the 13th century when they were a war band, the MacSweeneys, a major clan king group in Scotland at the time, end up having a disagreement with the King of Scotland in the Scottish-Norwegian War. During the Scottish-Norwegian War, the MacSweeneys actually sided on the, although they were Gaelic by the way, they were not Scandinavian, they actually sided on the side of the Norwegians, okay? And obviously they were on the losing side of that. Because of the fact that they were on the losing side of that, they were forced to immigrate to Ireland. And from there, they allied themselves with the Gaelic families, in particular the O'Connors and the O'Neills. Okay, the MacSweeneys do. There is other families like the MacDonalds and stuff that allied themselves through marriage alliances and various other means, allied themselves into various king groups in Ireland, clans, as we would say in English. In particular, the O'Neills and the O'Connors during the High Middle Ages. And then later on, they go into the kind of, as you would say, Anglo-Irish Hiberno-Normans, but that's going more into the late medieval period, Renaissance. But during the High Middle Ages, when there were still war bands, they would set up various marriage alliances and stuff with the king groups of Ireland, the clans, right? So then, because now they're part of the Irish society, as we go into the Brian O'Neill's revolt and the Thomond Wars, the Gallowglass end up becoming insanely feared amongst the English knights. Why? Because they were able to set up formations of shield and spears, and they were also well equipped with gambeson and riveted mail. So they were well equipped, well trained, and there was more of them compared to what was it called, the O'Neills and the O'Connors at the time, who were very much relying on their Clear Airy, their King's War bands, which were costing them a lot of money as well to kind of equip them themselves and stuff, right? So the Clear Airy, the King's War bands, not really cost efficient, okay, compared to the war bands, the mercenary war bands of the MacSweeneys and the MacDonalds, because you didn't always need to have them raised. When you didn't need them, they would just go on and become war bands to another clan, because there's always a cattle raid going on, there's always a skirmish going on, especially in this era when there's always fighting against other English, okay? So it was more cost effective just to have those mercenaries with your clan for a short period of time rather than continuously have them raised up, okay? So it wasn't the fact that that technology didn't exist or those tactics didn't exist before. It's the fact that they could keep using them. Plus, the MacSweeneys and MacDonalds were very, very battle hardened. They were more battle hardened because they were going from war and war, from battle to skirmish to battle to skirmish to raiding to skirmish constantly. They were very battle hardened and very trained. It was a common reflex for them. So when the English were coming in charging, they wouldn't, freeze up. but it does depend on the warband itself. Every warband seems to have a certain standard. So not every single Gallowglass warband was exactly the same as well. Some academics have pointed that out recently, especially in the book, what was it? Gaelic World at War from Fergus Cannon. Fergus Cannon in the podcast points that out as well, that he came across literature that did point out that not every single Gallowglass warband was well equipped and well battle hardened. You did come across warbands that didn't, wasn't as experienced as the last one. But other than that, they should be, compared to Clear Airy, king warbands that were just pinned to one particular clan that wouldn't have seen as much action. Regardless, MacSweeney's and MacDonald's end up dominating the battlefield, and what they would do is they would use, in the High Middle Ages, not talking about the late medieval period, but during the High Middle Ages, they would use their shield and spears to set up a formation to pin down the English cavalry as they were coming in. Once they were pinned down with the spears and the shields, they would then use their Danish axemen to go in there and cut up the English horsemen, which then caused them to become very effective. My ancestors were warrior monks. Oh, that's interesting. Definitely add on the information about that one. And not sure if they had armor. Did the monks have armor? I'm not sure what source you're going off of. When it comes down to monks on the battlefield, you do come across it during the early medieval period, allegedly. I still haven't come across the main source of that, but I have heard of academics talk about monks before going into battle with the Clear Airy King's Warband and also with the Kerns. But these bishops were mostly bishops who were already kings as well. So they were they were connected into the local Tuat king groups and stuff, and they were having disputes with other monastic settlements. And so I have heard of them leading men into battle before. So I'd have to find the source in that, to be quite honest with you. Who is Philmiv Miv Crivcon? He was king of Munster and he was a bishop, which is very interesting in itself. So he was both king of Cashel and he was bishop. And I have heard of a few people say that before, that it was quite common for the king of Munster to be bishop as well. But I'd have to do further research into that, to be quite honest with you, to see what the story is there. Oh, you're talking about that member. I didn't realise you were related to himself. He was slain in battle in 1090. That sounds about right. So the monks, if I was to assume what they were dressed in, I was definitely, given how much money that the monks had in Ireland at the time, and the bishops, I would assume that they were dressed in what everyone else is dressed in, which is the gammonsen riveted mail and the cheek helmet. The cheek piece helmet seems to be quite popular in Ireland at the time. And also you've got the, what's the other one? What's nicknamed as the goggle helmet, which is the helmet that goes on top, has the goggle on both sides, and then has riveted mail going down, and then it has the arming cap over that as well to cover the face. And there's a lot of riveted mail, not chain mail, but riveted mail, riveted together, which is even stronger than chain mail. And it stops, as the sword is coming in, it stops decapitation, because of the fact that decapitation was so popular in Ireland. And you can see that with the reflection of cheek pieces and riveted mail. Never mind all the stories in Finn Cycle and all the archaeological evidence that points out for headhunting in Ireland during the early medieval period. So you can see the reflection of that in the armour that's developed in Ireland as well. Sorry to interrupt again. Well, everyone's interrupting, I might as well jump in as well, sure. Sure, isn't that the point of the live stream? But I actually found an article on the Celts and the Slavs. For example, it says, oh, that's interesting. All right, definitely send that on to me on Instagram. You guys are pointing out very interesting articles. All that sort of stuff, if you want to send that on to me, definitely send it on to my Instagram at Irish Medieval History. I hope it don't distract you too much. No, it's grand. I think that's the point of everyone right now. The Lord of the Rings has a troll helmet. Oh, nice. How's everybody that's joined in? We're having an old chat. So you're saying my phone is better than the laptop? People were saying on the old chat there. Why did so many of the invaders of Ireland adopt and conform into border Irish rather than overall dominate the Irish as the English were dominated in turn? That would be down to the king group system in Ireland. So England's system was centralized, which is great for raising large forces and smashing them against something. The problem is with that then is that if you beat the main army of the English, what happens then is that you beat England, and then you can go over and occupy it, right? I know there's a good few fighting after that, with the harrowing of the north and stuff, but for the most part, what happens with England is if you can beat the English in the main battle, it then becomes a mopping up thing. So you beat the main English battle, and then you go around and mop up what's left of the English, and that's war with England pretty much. With Ireland, you winning one battle means nothing. It doesn't matter if it's a small battle to a large battle. What happens after that is that because there's no main capital of Ireland, is that the Irish then breaks into all their small little groups and they go amongst each other. What's worse still is once you go to war with one group, you go to war with all of the groups, okay? Because of the fact that you're dealing with a king group system in Ireland. What is the king group system in Ireland? Well, this is the problem is a lot of people look at Ireland and they see 150 independent Irish kingdoms. That is not how Ireland functions. Ireland functions on the king group system, the clan system, where you have thousands of clans connected to each other through fosterage, adoption, and hostages, okay? So they're marrying amongst themselves, they're fostering their children between the age of, between the age of 7 to 14. They will literally swap their kids around. And also they would, a larger clan, king group or to it, would take hostages from smaller clans to make sure that they all fall in line, okay? So what ends up happening is all these king groups are connected together through some means or some way, okay? So when you go to war with one clan, you go to war with all the clans. And so what happens is you go into that area and you end up fighting with this clan, but then you're fighting with this clan and you're fighting with this clan and you get caught up with all this weird stuff that's going on. But at the same time, and this is quite funny as well, is you'll have another clan come up to you and say, oh, I have a war that's going on over here, okay? I'll ally you to go and fight this other clan. And the problem is especially later on with the English, is they think, oh, well, that's divide and conquer. So if I ally myself with them, I can divide and conquer them. And that doesn't happen in Ireland. What happens is that you'll go in, ally yourself with them, and then you want to prove your loyalty by marrying into them. And all you're doing is further burying yourself into their politics. And this is why the English will send families, especially England, because England is very monarchy dominated. So England, for thousands of years, sent families and families and families into Ireland to, as colonists. And all that ends up happening is they end up becoming more Irish than the Irish themselves, because they're, to prove their loyalty, they're marrying into more Irish families and marrying into more Irish families. And the English will go and check up on them, and suddenly this Irish fella is looking back at them going, I'm the Berg, and they're just like, what the hell? You're not English. So that's what's going on there. It's not until we get to 1803 when the English government, who's no longer dominated by the English monarchy, tries to occupy and take over Ireland, that it's finally successful. That they're sending in the British military, the English military, as the Irish would call it, into Ireland and just wiping out territory, that they're finally somewhat successful, but then it just turns into, like, the British just cannot even run Ireland, and it turns into the Great Hunger, where they just take food out of Ireland, can't be asked running the administration, and so everything collapses. Because at least when they were sending families over under the medieval system, those English families were taking over the administration. When the British government takes over, they don't take over the British administration. Like, first and foremost, they kill Lord Edward Fitzgerald. He gets killed during the British takeover in 1798 or 1793. It's one or the other. Lord Edward Fitzgerald is killed. So the administration is completely collapses. So the British can't even be asked running the administration. And by the time you get it to around the 1850s, you have the Great Hunger, where pretty much everyone in Ireland ends up bloody starving to death, especially the members of the lower regions, like where am I? Where am I? Where am I? You're banned on Instagram? Jesus. I can understand. I was actually banned from Instagram at one stage. Back in the day, it was really easy to get banned from Instagram. I covered the Battle of Bloody Bay, which was fought around. Oh God, I can't remember when that was fought. The Battle of Bloody Bay. I covered that on Instagram, and Instagram didn't like it and they banned it. So back in the day, it was really easy. But these days, I think it's hard enough to get banned on Instagram. Instagram's the only one that's not giving out to me these days. And I'm doing quite well on Instagram. Bum, bum, bum. My ancestor was killed at the Battle of... Yeah, he went into battle barefoot. But everyone was supposed to go into battle barefoot. Said he would wear boots for the first time. That's funny. I think everyone went into battle back in the day in barefoot. Before 1920, everybody went into battle barefoot. They would take off their boots and stuff because they had no soles. If you look at one of the American Civil War, lads had to take their boots off because the battlefield got too muddy and slippery. They would slip over themselves if they had boots on. So it was actually quite common up to the First World War. It was quite common for lads to constantly take their boots off and their shoes. Even English longbowmen. I was going through the sources when I was looking into sources of the Irish Kerns in France. I found sources of English longbowmen taking off their boots and shoes anytime that there was difficulty in muddy terrain. So it was actually quite common for English longbowmen to take off their boots and shoes. And I remember I was talking about this to a woman from Sweden, and she was saying the same thing. It's the same thing in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, that it was quite common up around those regions for people to take their shoes off and boots anytime there was rough terrain. They would put on spikes. The Romans had spikes on their shoes, and there was also spikes found in Dublin as well. On the sole, they would put different various amounts from small little spikes to larger spikes. But the problem with spikes on your shoes is they're spikes on your shoes. So it's, advantages, disadvantages. But I think overall people prefer, especially doing martial arts, prefer going barefoot. So I think it was quite common. So I don't think there's too many disadvantages to going barefoot. Unless you're doing cavalry. If you're doing anything with horses, I think there's an advantage to having high heels on when doing cavalry, because in Japan they would also take off their... I actually did. I found sources in Japan as well. When I was in Nagoya, they have sources of the infantry taking off their shoes and boots and stuff, and it's only the cavalry that keep their sort of high heels, but it makes it easier to use the horse and stuff. So I think it's just the cavalry that have advantages, especially using high heels and stuff, until 1920. What's very interesting then is after going into the First World War, which is fought between 1914 to 19... When's that finished up? 1918 is when you see a lot more boots and stuff. But then, guess what? Trench foot becomes a thing. So it's very interesting. The moment we start, especially going into war with our boots and shoes, which now it'd be impossible to fight a war without boots. If you were revolving around a war now, especially with the amount of cattle spikes and stuff that's on the ground, in trench warfare, and what was it called, bits of brick and building and stuff sticking up, and all the barbed wire and stuff. You'd have to have boots on these days. Especially if you're looking at the stuff that's been happening in Israel and Ukraine, you have to have boots on these days. Imagine. But back then, I think it was just... Now, don't get me wrong, people do take advantage of the ground as well during both the Scottish War of Independence and the 100 Years' War. During the Scottish War of Independence, they also put out, I think they're cattle spikes, aren't they? I can't remember. I think that's the one that I'm thinking about. they would put out these little spikes. They'd throw them on the battlefield. So when people come running in, it would go through their foot. But that would go through your foot even if you just had the leather shoes on. And the English then got a hold of those tactics, so they also were using that during the 100 Years' War as well. And then they got notorious, the English longbowmen got notorious for putting stakes in front of their position. How am I? Oh, that's grand. 1 second. We'll start finishing up now because my internet's starting to go low. I will fight a war with slippers and thermal drawing. Yeah, trench foot becomes a massive problem going into that period for sure. Right, I will have to start finishing up there. Guys, I will be back on again on Sunday, okay? No, Sunday for me, Saturday for you lads. As I was saying before, if you're over in New York, I'm sure it's 5 p.m. in 4 p.m. It could be 4 p.m., 3 p.m. I'll set up the live stream. Actually, I'll go onto the computer there and I'll set up the live stream and I will post that up. But I think it's around 4 p.m., 4 p.m., 3 p.m. around there in Chicago, New York, and Boston. We're gonna do a live stream. This is gonna be on Saturday night for you guys. And we're going to be covering clans, dynasties, and families. So we're going to cover the clans, talk about the clans anyway. I'll have a nice little map and everything for you guys. Also, what else do I need to do? Dun 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 dun. Patreon Sunday night, around 4 p.m. American time, 9 p.m. Irish time. We're going to be covering the Bergs and the O'Connors fighting in Connacht in the 13th century. So we're going to be covering the Bergs and the O'Connors over on Patreon on Sunday night on Patreon. So head on over there. 20 quid a month if you want to sign up for the classes, or if you just want to support the channel for a stop in Irish medieval history, your money will go into feeding me and buying me coffee first and foremost. And also, buying me books. I need to get more books. I'm missing the bloody book of, what was it called? Gaelic World at War is the book I'm bloody after right now. But anyway, if you want to support the channel, wherever, I think there's a subscription somewhere here. Some of the boys, if you look at some of the chat comments there, some of the boys have already signed up. So you get all this fancy stuff if you sign up to the YouTube version. And also you can sign up over on Patreon as well. I think the advantage to the Patreon one is I get a better cut, a better percentage. I think that's what the advantage is. Also, I'm doing classes over on Patreon as well. And that's on Irish medieval history. So definitely head on over there and have an old nosy for yourself. Other than that, guys, thanks very much and slán go bhfuil. Now this is going to be interesting because I haven't signed off at this before. So this is the first time I'm going to sign off here. So I'm going to work out how this works. Okay. Are you sure you want to stop streaming? So that's how you finish it off. Right. See you later, lads. Bye. Bye, 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 bye.